All right, let's try this. Okay. All right, let's see if anyone shows up for chapter 2 of me trying to make this stuff work. There we go. There's the chat. Let's get rid of this. Get rid of this. There's one viewer. That's me. Let's have a look. 3 viewers. Wow, outstanding. Bear in mind, you can use the chat if you want to ask me something or say something. Right. So the problem was, I'm stupid, and because I was returning cached file info objects before, this thing up here. And I was caching the actual underlying file info. This metadata obviously never changed, because even if I changed the file, this stuff wouldn't change because I was caching it. That was the whole idea. But I hadn't implemented this part before, which is the caching of the stream itself, which meant that while the file size wouldn't have been changing because I was caching that metadata, the contents wasn't being cached, so I can get a mismatch between the actual content and the file info metadata. So that was just my silly fault because of the fact that the call to read stream was being delegated through, and the stream itself obviously wasn't being cached. So I need to do that work manually because there's a manual call to create read stream every time. So anyway, I'm doing that now. And I also went through and I changed the cached file provider to just use memory cache rather than a couple of concurrent dictionaries. Because the memory cache interface that ASP.NET Core provides has some smarts in it. It'll actually clear stuff out based on memory pressure and things like that. So I've had to change this code just slightly. I have to create a key now. I can't just use, I could just use the subpath, but to avoid collisions with the rest of the app, because this object is obviously shared throughout the entire app, I'm prefixing the subpath with just the name of these methods, just to ensure that these cache keys are a little more unique for these 2 cases. And then the building method here that gets used to actually populate the cache in the case that it's empty or it's a miss is now just wrapping or closing over subpath here rather than using the cache entry that's passed in. So that works fine. The other thing we did was hook up watching, so that if the underlying file does change, we get notified of that. And we can go ahead and so down here you can see I'm passing in the file provider to the cache file info. Then I call this method called refresh on here. Refresh just takes a lock on this cache file info object, and then it goes ahead and using the underlying file provider that was passed through from here, gets the file information and then calls the watch API on the file provider with the subpath that was originally used. And then so that when the file provider detects that the file has changed, I'll get a callback, and then I can just refresh the thing. So the way the callback works, it's a one-shot affair. So every time it's called you, it won't call you again. And so you have to resubscribe. So that's what's happening here. The refresh method, when it's first called, subscribes using the watch method and register change callback here. This delegate from line 57 through to 61 will only run when the file has changed. At that point, no more delegates will get called unless you call register change callback again. And because the first thing I do in here is just called refresh, that's effectively what happens. So it calls refresh, sets it up, and then it disposes the callback just for cleanliness sake, because register change callback returns are disposable. Technically, I don't think that's actually required. The actual implementation behind this is a cancellation token. And as long once the callback has been called, it won't be called again. So this is really just to make sure that we're being super anal about this stuff, and we're disposing it here. So a couple of things I want to add to this. I mean, so it does work now. I can run this and prove that to you. And I just did a Control F5. I probably should have done. I can just run it this way. Oh, and I've broken something since I last did it. Doesn't that just? Oh yes, because I swapped this out and didn't actually run it since then. Okay, so this now wants a file provider, which it has, and it needs an iCache, which I can pass through. This is not being resolved from DI, so I'm going to have to do it manually, which is fine. Application services get required service of iMemory cache. Spell it right. After a few goes, okay. So now I'm creating my cache file provider, passing in the webroot file provider and the memory cache. Okay, so that should build now. Let's just make sure. Okay, very good. So if I run this, all right, so the app is running, and I've probably locked that console now. There we go, unpause it. Come over to here, which is the UI I was using before. This is me searching through the code. I think I have the page up. I do. So I hit F5. If we go back to the console, we'll see stuff happening. It's compiling the view for the first time, which is why the first one is a little slow. All right, so there it is. The file currently says changed again, because that was me changing it last time. But if I hit F5, you can see nothing is obviously changing. Everything will be coming out of memory. I think I have some breakpoints, but they're not being hit because, let's have a look. Did I get rid of all the breakpoints? Let's have a look. Window. Is there a link to the breakpoint window here? Nope. View, other windows. Where's my breakpoints window? It's here somewhere. Everyone's probably screaming at me now, saying, it's right there. You can't see it. It's right there. Come on. Windows. There it is. Breakpoints. There we go. I don't have any. I got rid of them all. Let's go over here. Let's go over to here. So this will only get called when it actually has to read the stream, when it creates the underlying stream to save the file. So now that's already happened. If I hit F5, oh, it's doing it. So they made a liar out of me. Let's have a look. Oh, silly me. I put the breakpoint in the wrong spot. So if the content is not null, which it isn't because it's already been read, oh, there you go. So now we can see. So now if I go back, now if I hit F5, no breakpoint is hit because contents isn't null because it's been cached, and we're off to the races. So now if I change this file, change again in front of everybody watching, and save that, callback is going to occur. That's going to clear out the entry. If I come back to here now and hit F5, we can see now it's actually reading from the file system again because content is null now because it got cleared out. Run that, come back, and you can see it changed again in front of everybody watching. So now it's actually got the desired behavior, which is it only goes to the file system when it detects that the file has changed. Otherwise, if I hit F5, I hit refresh here, it's just always reading from that in-memory stream. So functional caching of the dub root folder in memory, which is nice, okay? But a couple of things I want to add to this just to make it a little more complete. So let's shut that down. Right now, I don't have any guard on this. Like, it's just caching everything all the time. Memory cache will, as I said, evict entries under memory pressure, but I probably want to put just a failsafe in here such that if I happen to drop a larger file in dub-root, that I don't cache that. It would be unfortunate if somehow I put a multi-hundred megabyte file or even a gigabyte file in here, and then someone served it. Then I was caching it in memory. I'm going to suddenly be using an awful lot of memory in my application, which I don't want to do. So let's put a little guard around this, and we'll just pick a file size. So at the moment, if I was to look at this on disk, I could just, so we can see, home, the background is 106 kilobytes. It's probably going to be one of the biggest files, actually. Images, these are all, well, that doesn't help me, does it? Let's flip over to details view here. Okay, they're all tiny. JavaScript, they're tiny, good. And then the lib, I imagine these would be, somewhat larger, obviously. In the very rare case where these don't get served from the CDN, I think on the original picture of this, I'd only ended up serving Bootstrap from the local disk like once. But it is a large file. It's 252 kilobytes for jQuery if you serve the unminified file, which I shouldn't be, but you never know. Point is, these are all in my folder. jQuery validation. How big is Bootstrap? Okay, 120, 109, 143. And I don't think this JavaScript file is very big. It's not. Fonts. Okay, so nothing's been over 150 yet, I think. Nope, 250. 252 for jQuery. How big was my image? I don't think it was that big. I think it was 100 and something. Yeah, 100. Okay. So let's just say we'll 256 kilobytes seems like a reasonable limit for this. I could probably make it smaller, but that's fine. So let's down here when we create the read stream. Here I'll add a check. If length is, we'll just do it before this. So if length, which is this object's length property, is greater than or equal to, and this will be in bytes, right? Yeah. So 256 multiplied by 1024. And yeah, I could actually do that math and put the thing in there, but I'm being lazy. If length is greater than 256 kilobytes, then we will just call through to the underlying file API. All right, we're not going to do anything tricky. I'm just going to do this, and I'll just return it. And I could probably put that outside the lock, because I don't need to take the lock if I'm not going to be manipulating. Okay, so now if our read stream, when create read stream is called, if the file is, excuse me, if the file is larger than 256 kilobytes, then we'll go ahead and do that. So this is bugging me now. Static read only. File size limit is equal to 256 multiplied by 1024. Let's get rid of our magic numbers. We'll put that in here. Get rid of that. I have to actually give it, type, because it's C#. And then I'll stick this where it belongs, at the top of this file, at the top of this class. I could make it configurable if this was actually going to be a feature, which it might be. We might end up making this cached file provider a feature, because I think it would be very useful in Azure, where we know that the dub root is on a slower drive. This could be an interesting feature for apps where you don't want to go through the trouble of configuring a CDN, where the CDN will do the edge caching for you, and thus you won't end up hitting your application. This is just kind of nice to have by default, so we don't hit the file system. Use a little bit more RAM, obviously, but this would have to be configurable. In here, I'm just going to hard code it to be 256 kilobytes, but making this configurable is outside the scope of what I need for this app, but we would obviously do that in a real thing. All right, so let me just make sure I'm actually using all this stuff. I think I am now. So file info, that gets created there, but this was there, gets overrun. This was there, so was there. Okay, I think that's fine. Probably should, yeah. I'm not going to bother guarding against null. I could guard against null a bunch of this stuff. I mean, it gets called in the constructor, so there shouldn't be any way that these can be null. It would only be something through, obviously, in here. If that through, then you could end up with this object being invalid, but I don't have any exception handling in here anyway. So I'm obviously not too concerned about that. If I wanted to do that, I could probably add a line in here to do handle file file load exceptions. Yep. Okay. All right. So this is false. This is false. File info data directory. Okay. I think that's it. So if we're over the file size limit, then go ahead and just delegate through to the underlying file info and don't bother. Now, what's interesting here is I'm still using, I'm now fallen back into the original problem, which is I'm using the cached file info object, but I'm just creating the stream every time. So what I really want to do is not cache it at all if the file size is larger than the length. Now, this is where it might get a little tricky because I can't know it. I can't know the length until the item, until the file info is created. And given the way this all hangs together, the order of operations here just needs to be thought about a bit. So if someone calls get file info, I'm not going to know the size of it. So here I'm just assuming it should go in the cache. Whereas what I should really do is check if it's in the cache, and if it's not, make manually, and then if it's not, go ahead and load the file info object. And if the file info object is larger than the size, then just return that file info object and not put it in the cache. That would be the correct way to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to expose myself to the exact same problem I had before. For files that were larger than 256 kilobytes, I'm going to be caching all the metadata, but not the stream. So then if I change the file, although we are doing change tracking now, so if the file changes, it will force a reload because refresh will get called here. So, and that's protected by that lock. So it still seems wrong though, doesn't it? I think the way it really should work here, the way it really should work is for me to do that that check in this method here. We'll try that in a minute. Let me see make sure I haven't broken it in this part yet, and then I'll get fancy and we'll add that part. Now the second part I want to do is this part, which is I want to support priming the cache file provider so that I can do this on startup, so that rather than waiting for all these paths to get called and just having it read from the disk that one time, I'd rather just do it all at app start. And so I have a specific method here that I can call that will do that. So this has to scan the file provider and eagerly cache all entries. All right, so I'll do that in a little bit. So let's just make sure I haven't broken this first by adding this file limit. And for now, I will make the limit a little smaller just so we can actually see a difference. So I had, what do we see? So for something like CSS, we've got site.css is 4K, and the background is 106K. So if I just make the size sort of 64K, then we should see that the background image always goes through if the browser doesn't cache it, whereby the site one won't. Okay, so let's change this to 64K for the moment. You know, comments get out of date. I'll just do this. Okay. And then I'll run this. And so now what we should be able to see is that the background image always gets loaded from disk, but everything else, most things, the CSS file, for example, will get cached. So if I go and actually hit the app now, like so, it's compiling the view, serving the view, there it is. Let's come over here, let's add our breakpoint back. So everything has gone through here. So that's the case where the file size is too big, and that's the case where it needs to load it because contents is null. So if I go back here, if I just hit F5, I think the browser's not gonna, oh no, there you go. So here we go. So this looks like it's the home page. Oh, this is bootstrap.css. Because I'm running in local development mode, it's loading all the libs from the local app rather than the CDN. So that's good. It's avoiding it there. Another one. And none of these other ones, this is just going to be everything that comes off disk now because the other breakpoint is in the section that's guarded by the cache. And so in theory, we should see, let's have a look. We'll do this one, put one here, and we'll see things like the CSS file. So this is obviously, if I look at this, file info here, that's for the bootstrap file. And then that's for site.css. So you can see site.css was smaller than the limit, but contents won't be null because it's already been read. So it's not going to read the file system. It's just going to create a new memory stream, wrap it around the pre-cache contents, and you're off to the races. All right, so that seems to be working. I didn't break it, which is good. So now we're only caching things that are 64 kilobytes or smaller. So I'll kill that, put that back to the limit I wanted, which is covers everything in my application currently, which is 256. All right, so that's good. All right, let's go back here. I want to make sure no one's asking me any questions. So look. Oh, I do. Okay. And it looks like you're all talking among yourselves. KIB, sure. All right. So I have a limit, which is good. Next thing I wanted to do is support this eagerly scanning thing. So this thing here. So already in my startup CS, where I create this cache file provider, I am actually going ahead and calling prime cache. But you know what? I really should just put this thing in DI, shouldn't I? So let me do that. Well, I would have to change the contract. If I put that in DI, I can't just take a file provider anymore, right? Because you can't pull file providers out of DI. I can pull a hosting environment out of DI, but then it wouldn't be a cache file provider in DI. It would be I don't know, cached, a specific interface that caches the web root file provider, which is fine, but it would have to take in iHosting environment. So, I'll leave it like this for the moment. This is fine. All right, so prime the cache. So I basically need to, let's try some stuff out. Let's figure this out. I actually have never called these APIs before, so we'll figure out what happens here. I'm just going to go into exploration mode, and we'll figure this out as we go. All right, so file provider dot get directory contents. I'm assuming if I give it empty, then that will give me the root. And what is contents? Like some IEnumerable or iDirectory contents. Okay. What does that have on it? Okay. Gives me an enumerator, which is an IEnumerable file info. Makes sense. So that leads me to believe that directory contents implements file info. Cannot never. So it's an IEnumerable of file info. Interesting. So it gives me a bunch of files, but how do I know? How do I get subdirectories? Is directory. There you go. So if it's a directory, it'll be that. And then the assumption is I would have to call get directory info again with the path, the subpath, which I've created by tracking the parent, and then adding on this one's name. So it looks like you have to do a bit of manual construction to do this scanning here. Nick is asking, can we cache once per content encoding, avoiding the gzip, deflate, etc. costs given how these are split out? I'm intending to cache the source rather than the content encoding variant. Given that this site usually runs behind IIS, and the only content encoding transform that I'm aware of that happens is with the compression module in IIS, which is outside this code, right? It runs in a different process. I can't really do the caching in here. And so all I'm really trying to do here is avoid accessing this physical folder on disk. So I'm literally trying to cache it at the source. And if the compression module has to recompress it every time, I'm not super concerned about that. That would be better served by putting a cache in front of that part of the application, or using something like a CDN or some type of edge cache provider. But the application is more than just this code because of the fact it's running behind IIS. And so for now, caching at the source is the first step to avoiding having to hit this expensive disk. All right, so I have to get I'll get a bunch of things. Some of these are going to be directories, and some of them aren't. So the idea being if file info, nope. Come on, IntelliSense, stop fighting me. Is directory. Yep. Then you have to do a dive, and obviously have to put this in a while loop and make it recursive. I'll do that in a moment. So I'll need to call the original file provider dot get directory contents, but now I need to use a subpath. So there'll be some tracking. This is basically a descendant search. I need to track the current folder path. And a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do this by splitting this out into a couple of methods. One that takes, the current folder and the current path and then calls itself and makes it recursive. Or you can just do it in a while loop with a bunch of variables that you build on as you go. But because I'm actually diving into subfolders here, I'm very likely going to have to split this into separate methods. But yeah, we'll figure this out as we go. I don't do this type of code every day. So, I mean, I've written this code obviously dozens of times in my life. But you just kind of refigure it out every time. Okay, so this will be whatever the current subpath, whatever the file info name is. Why is my autocomplete doing weird things? But I have to append a character. Now, the file provider API, I think, is / independent. So I can always just pass / and it won't matter what file system I'm on. But I need to, whatever the current base path is on, I'm going to have to go ahead and do that. So let's start splitting this out. Prime directory, directory cache. I think my shift button is, there we go, being a little gnarly. Oh man, you can tell I don't type on this keyboard much. Okay. Current path. And so this will get called okay. File provider dot get directory contents for current path. And what have I done? There we go. It's just slow. All right, that's easy. If it's directory, then we're going to dive inside that one by taking current path, adding a /, adding file info.name. And rather than doing that, obviously, we will just call the method. Okay. Else we will call get file info, I guess. I guess I should call get directory contents in each one too, shouldn't I? Oh, shoot. Okay. Come on. Guess I would do that up here. Get directory contents for current path. That will invoke this, which will cause that metadata for the directory contents to be cached. In fact, I could just use that, obviously. So we'll do that here. Okay. Else, we'll call get file info and disregard for current path plus a / plus file info.name. So the file info doesn't contain the full subpath. You get the name of the current file info, and then the subpath is the combination of where you are in the parent directory / file provider. File info does contain the full physical path, right? But that's not the subpath. That's because the file provider is rooted somewhere, and its root, just like a website, right? The physical path is different to the application virtual root. So this file info API is very similar. So okay. So I mean, in theory. So you start with the base, assuming this is how you do the root. I have no idea. We'll find out. So let's put a breakpoint here, and we'll see what happens. So again, all I'm trying to do here is to dive into the file system before. So we'll do this, step over this, we'll step over that, we'll assume it worked. Okay, so it worked, I got something. Current path is empty. File info is for, what are we at? Physical path is the CSS folder, which will be the first thing, so that's good. Step over that. It is a directory, so now we're going to step back into our cells. All right. I didn't step in, I stepped over. So now we're onto the second file info, which is the fav icon. So this time it'll jump over and call that. So it's going to concatenate root with there. Well, see, I might have to guard the slash here in the case that that's empty. That was a bit lazy, but it seems to be working. It doesn't seem to be failing. Of course, I'm not looking at the return result. If I do this over here, well, it seems to work. Exists is true. So even if you pass a leading slash, it seems to, even though the subpath is /, it figures it out. So I don't have to guard against that. It kind of just does the right thing. Okay. See if I can get to one that's a directory again. We'll see if it dives correctly. All right. So now I'm in, where am I? Still I'm in the root. I'm now diving into images. So then if I step into this stack, now current path should be images, which it is. It's going to go over every image. So the first one should be ASP logo new. That's good. PNG, loads that. Step over. Second one. There's my SVG file. Good. Second one. Wow, this code ended up being an awful lot simpler if this is actually doing what I want. All right, I'm just going to continue through now. Take these breakpoints off. Seems to be working. Application started, didn't explode. Hit F5. It's going to. Okay, so there we go. And what I might do is add some logging so I can actually see what the hell's going on here. But in theory now, in fact, to do this properly, I should restart the app because everything's going to get loaded as part of the app boot up. If I do this and just let it prime itself, all right, so I'll get rid of this. Okay, scans root, application has started. That didn't take long. That's good. So now in theory, all this stuff should be cached already. So I'll only ever hit this, and I shouldn't hit this breakpoint, right? So now if I go back to the app and hit F5, it's compiling the view. All right, so, well, that didn't work. Oh, I have to actually call create read stream because I'm not eagerly caching the stream. That's why. Okay, so all the metadata was cached, but not the streams. Okay, so I need to actually go ahead and aggressively call read stream and everything as well. Yep, two-stage caching. So let's go back to here, and we'll do dot create read stream, and I'll just do dot dispose. All right, so now I'm caching the stream by forcibly reading each one. So let's try that again. I'll leave my breakpoints in the same spot. I'm assuming this will take a little bit longer. And I can, we could get super fancy here and parallelize all this and do all types of crazy stuff. So now it's going to hit these breakpoints, obviously, because it's doing this during app start. So application has started. That means that's finished. I'll put my breakpoint back. So now if I come back here and hit F5, I shouldn't get any breakpoints, right? Because everything is big enough. My app is, oh, it's still doing it. Contents is null. Which file info is this? Let's have a look. Site.css. Okay, what did I do wrong? So I'm calling get file info. That should stick it in the cache, which it will. Returns the new cache file info. I call create read stream, which should do. Oh, where am I in the stack? Oh, I'm in here. So why is that happening? That's interesting. Come back here, hit F5, and then it's not doing it there. So it's working when the app is running, but not working when it's loaded. Am I missing that file somehow? All right, so let's find out. So let's run it again. We should see this path get hit during app startup, which is now. Here we are. Prime directory cache. We're in line. We're in a recursive call. That's a background image. There's site.css. Okay. And so create read stream is being called because I am now calling that as part of the priming of the cache. So that's good. Creates the stream, creates the memory string, copies it into the memory stream, sets the contents, which is currently null, to that, which is good. This thing's name is site.css. That's good. All right. And if I unwind, if I step out of this here, oh, that's what it'll be. It's a mismatch between, it's that backslash has come to haunt me. So now my keys are not matching. So because this has set the current path to /CSS, I am going to bet that when the static file handler sets it, it doesn't have the leading slash. All right, that's my hunch. So what I need to change this to be, make this a little easier. Prefix equals string.is null or empty current path. Do that, else it's current path plus that. It helps if you get those the right way around. And then I will concatenate my prefix. All right, so now I should have a nice clean prefix. Let's run that again. So someone's saying I should use path.combine. I could. As I said, path.combine is OS aware, whereas these abstractions don't really care what you pass in. So I could use path.combine. I probably should. But this code will work because I'm not actually directly interacting with the file system. So now if we unwind this stack, we should see that, right? So I don't have that leading slash anymore. So hopefully now all my cache keys map. So we're eagerly going through. Let's undo this breakpoint. This is the app startup. We're still in that call stack. Okay, so now the application has started. Stick this here. Now, in theory, no breakpoints. So it's going to have to compile the view the first time, which is why we see a little bit of a delay. Okay, so we're hitting a breakpoint still. So this one is null. Interesting. This is the same file. I'm still missing something here. What am I missing? What am I missing? This looks like it's site.css. It is. So subpath is /. Okay. So much for that idea. So I do need the leading slash because that's from this API here. Send async has been called. Interesting. And the subpath as it was passed in was /CSS /site.css. Okay, and it looks like this API is a little flexible, but I have to use it in the same way as the middleware is using it. Otherwise, the calls to here will have different subpaths. So rather than starting with an empty string, I'll start with, well, you know, I could do it here, couldn't I? So let's do that. And then I could just get rid of all this gnarly logic that I have and just change this to be kind of back to what I had before. Which I have to do in here, obviously. So in theory, and what we'll do is we'll, okay. So here's prime the directory cache. Okay, so start here. It calls here. It's going to start from the root. Now, see, that's going to be double slash now. So I have to go back to what I had. Current path. So if that equals that, then prefix will just be that, else it will be current path plus that. And then we can go back to doing what I was doing before. Here, like so. Path. Path concatenation. Okay. All right, let's try this. So this is going to get called at the beginning when the app is up. That's going to pass in, obviously, certain subpaths here, and then we need to compare those with the ones that the middleware does and make sure I'm using the same one. Yes, I don't need to ignore case. That's just a force of habit. Thanks, Ben. All right. Current path will be slash. Prefix is slash. First thing is a directory. We go into that. It's the images directory. I'll just go through. Current path now will be slash CSS. It's a CSS directory, I should say. Should be no here. So here should be my site, background. Okay. We'll go through the loop, step through, step out. Okay, step through. So this should be CSS. So I'm going to be creating a cache entry with slash CSS slash site.css. That's good. So we should see that this API gets called where subpath is equal to slash CSS slash site.css. That's good. That will be the key, get file info and subpath. And then on the resulting object, I'm going to call create read stream. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So now it's doing that. I'll take rid of that breakpoint for the moment. I'll get rid of that one. Let the app finish booting. Get rid of that one. Okay, so app has booted. Now what I want to do is ensure that I get the same thing being called here. So compiling the view. Okay. Slash CSS slash site.css. Okay. Looks like what I had before, right? So in theory, this shouldn't get called, which it doesn't. Okay, that one did. Slash CSS slash site.css. Well, okay. What am I doing wrong? Interesting that that's... It says I'm in this line. Static file context.lookup file. Site slash CSS site.css. Key is going to be blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Slash CSS slash site.css. So Nick Crave is asking, is there a map path equivalent? So I can, using the file info object, I can get the physical path. It's already on the file info object. So that's the spiritual sort of equivalent of map path. I'm not sure it's going to help me much here. Like ultimately what's happening is the middleware is calling it with this subpath because that's what's been requested by the page, right? It wants CSS slash site.css. Now I called that before. So in theory, my memory cache object, this thing, has an entry, right, with that thing already. So here's my entries, right? And there's min.css. Where is... I mean, I guess it could be being ejected. I'd just be surprised. See, I'm not seeing that entry. That's actually interesting. Why is that entry not in there? We saw it. Oh, no, that's site.min. Why is site.css not in the memory cache? Get file info. It should be the first one. It should be before this one. Because we saw it go in there. It's like it's getting evicted. Which obviously is not expected. So if I go back to the page now, I hit F5. See, so it'll be in there now because it got added. I wonder if something about adding them all very quickly during the startup is... It is interesting that it's the first one and it's the one that's gone. Although the tag help one was in before. So yeah, I can add, as John's saying, I can use the cache removal callback to log if it gets expelled. It just seems super weird that that's happening. I wonder... there's a way to configure it. Oh, come on. Come on, hands. Add, not use. Options. Oh, wow. This keyboard is really driving me a little crazy today. Compact on memory pressure. Well, I guess all it does is compact on memory pressure. Doesn't say what it does, really. You can set the clock, expiration scan, that's it. You can't set a size or anything. Why would it be being expelled? You can't remove entries, as far as I know, not without having a handle on the original entry. So back to here, this one here. This is where I'm creating the cache. Oh, wow, this keyboard makes it really difficult to hit a shift key. And so I'm going to have to return this. Okay. All right. Okay, so C dot, interesting. I wonder how long it'll go in there for. Ben, a reason I'm not using response caching middleware is the response caching middleware is HTTP caching, and that will result in the files. It works using the response cache headers, which means that those headers go out to the client. And that means that anything else between me and the client can cache this stuff. That means I need to implement some type of cache breaker as part of the URL. Now, I can do that with tag helpers for things that are registered in the page, but doing it for things like font files that are registered or images that are referenced from CSS files means you have to actually build all that into the processing of the CSS files themselves. Now, plenty of things exist for that on other stacks, but I'm not using any of those type of mechanisms, right? So I didn't want to go through all the trouble. All I really want to do is protect serving of files from this folder, because I know that's what the problem is here. But that's ultimately the reason. I could use the response caching middleware and then put a bit of middleware in front that suppresses all caching headers from going out to the client. That way, the response caching middleware would at least cache in memory, but none of the headers would go back out to the client. But that just seemed, I don't know, that seemed hackier for some reason. This seems like a more reasonable thing that anyone who's hosting on Ontario's where we know we have a slower drive could reasonably use once I get all this code right. So let's figure out what's going on here. So I guess I can just debug this. Let's just look at the callbacks. register post eviction callback. Okay. So John's saying cache breaking could be part of the caching middleware derived from file date time and or SHA. It doesn't really change. I mean, it'll break the cache in the server, but you can't tell the client to break the cache that it already has based on the headers you gave it the first time. All right. The only way you can do that is to change the URL. All you can do is send back metadata with the entry to the client that says, I want you to request a new copy of this when this happens, like when some timestamp expires. Or you can forcibly change the URL that originally was pointing to the resource, in this case, maybe an image link in the HTML, by way of having that thing read the files when it's rendering the image, rendering the HTML, sorry, and stamping something on based on the time, a SHA of the file, which forces you to read the entire file anyway, or the timestamp or something along those lines. So, I mean, cache breaking is a well understood issue. Tag helper that adds file date time as query string on file name for script CSS. We have that already. So Ben, we do that already. The link tag helper and the script tag helper have this feature already, and they're used in the templates by default. In fact, I can just show you that. You don't have to take my word for it. If I look in shared and I look in the layout page, and you'll see we have append version equals true. Okay, and that's what that does. It adds a SHA-based version to the output, to the tag to do cache busting. All right. But as I said before, that doesn't actually solve the issue I have right here. So let's add, I don't know what the delegate is, so I'll just assume it's an action. I don't know. And I'll add a logger. Screw it. Now I really am going to want to have this activated at a DI. iLogger of cache file provider. Logger. Move this to the top because, we like to be neat. Okay. All right. Go away. All right. I'll have to fix the calling code in just a moment. So let's go back down here. And we can say ilogger.log warning. So my guess is this delegate. Yep. So it takes some argument. Nope. It takes 2 arguments. Nope. Takes 3 arguments. Okay, I'm going to give up now. Okay. Key, object, eviction reason, and state. Wow. What was it? Key, object, key, value, reason, and state. Okay, key, value, reason, and state. Okay, log information, message and args, key, value, reason. I don't care about state. So we'll do, is that right? I can't remember how to do this. Yeah, that's right. The idea is if I give these meaningful names, it'll flow through as structured data. Key, value, oh golly. Reason. All right. Trace that right line. Structured data. All right. Let's wrap this here. Okay, cache entry. Key was evicted. I don't need a value. Due to reason. Okay. All right. Now I need to actually do this over here. So I'm making this super hard for myself because I don't have this thing in DI. Really, I could just cheat and do this. Oh, it wanted of T. That's not going to work. Blah. Okay. Okay. This is really quite horrible. I really should just change this now. This makes me sad. Makes me sad. Okay. Screw it. Let's change all this so I can do this in DI because this is driving me nuts. Of course, I could have just done the logical thing here, which is cached web. Oh, I did that totally wrong. Come on, IntelliSense, work with me. All right. All right. Nope. Okay. Oh, that totally didn't work. All right, let's give it a chance to reset itself. Okay. You happy now? Okay, can I rename you now? Oh, man. Cached web root. Rename that to that. There we go. I will put this in DI, which means I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to take iHosting environment. Is that shift key giving me hell again? Hosting env.webroot file provider. There we go. So that's all I need to do there. And then I come back here, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get this thing out of DI, so I will just grab it here. Oh my man. Cached webroot file provider. Cached web. Oh man, this is really getting tired. I need a new keyboard. Oh wow. Okay. Cached webroot, and I'll stick it in DI. What's it complaining about? Oh, that's internal. Because I used a template. I actually used control dot, and that creates them as internal because why wouldn't you want to do that? Okay, let's go back and add a service. Services dot add singleton cached webroot file provider. Perfect. All right. Oh man, that S just wants to be everywhere. Okay, so yep, see that S, it's just appearing. Oh man. It's because I'm hitting Control S, and for some reason my control keys on this keyboard have to be hit really hard, it seems, and I'm just putting rampant S's all over the place. Does this build? Did I get everything right? Build. It did. Okay. All right, so now this is cleaner. All right, so in theory, we should see this get emitted in the logs, at least now when it gets evicted. Yeah, got through remote desktop, but my control key didn't. Exactly. It's exactly what's happening. F5. All right. Okay, what am I waiting to do? Let's see if when it gets evicted. In the wall of code. Okay. Static files. Not seeing it. Oh, there it is. Was evicted due to capacity. Well, there you go. That explains it. So how do I change the capacity? Very nice. All right. I didn't see that in the options, which has me a bit worried now. I didn't see that in the options for when I was adding services to add memory cache options. Well, that's interesting. Space. And yet it does. I bet it hits this before a resize. A resize of what, Nick? I mean, the compact, I think it means actually evict. And I'm not sure it does any type of special compacting. I think it just, when it hits memory pressure, it'll go through and evict the stuff based on their priorities. So at this point, usually I would just turn around and ask someone on the team. But, you know, I'm off in a separate room right now. So let's see if we can't figure this out by looking at the code. Might be easier if I just do this, eh? Go back, do this. Of the iMemory backer, which is this thing. Capacity. Expire priority bucket. Entries to remove count is blah, blah, blah. Do we meet our quota just by removing expired entries? Nope. Remove the count, priority entries.count, removal count, expire all the entries in this bucket. So it's like some crazy bucketed memory cache thing, which looks great. Expire enough entries to reach our goal. Order by the last accessed, which is why it's going first. I wonder if the resize versus pressure detection order isn't what you'd think. Likely candidate. The resize versus pressure detection order is what you'd think. Yeah, you kind of, I mean, you almost want a way to like suppress while you're priming the cache. I mean, it just seems strange that I can't change the order. I can't change the size. Like it just says eviction is, here's the capacity. That's it. Is there not a way to change the capacity? So here's the options accessor. Clock. If a compact, no register on memory pressure. Expiration scan. Blah, blah, blah. Cache entry. Check dispose. Cache entry. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing particularly interesting here. It's just set entry. Okay, if it's already expired, then it's not already small. So we can something. Yeah, okay. Initialize the last access timestamp. At the timestamp it's added. Set expired. If it was replaced. If entry.check expired. If not, then yeah, okay. Start scan for expired items. Maybe I should set the expiration time to something beyond the default. I don't know what it is by default, honestly. It doesn't seem to be completely clear here what it would be if you just add an item, which is what I'm doing. So it doesn't seem like this is going to give me anything. I'll just comment that for the moment. But come over here. When I actually add this to the cache down here, where is it? Here. You can set expiration times. And you can set priority. So that's interesting. What does that do? Okay, that's a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I think you're right, Ben. This is why I do this. This is a chance to see stuff in its raw and have me work through it using just my wit to figure it out, which, you know, isn't that great. All right, I need to have a look at what this is set to. So there it is again. I want to see what these expirations are set to by default. I mean, it says it's being evicted due to capacity, not due to expiration. So I don't think that's the problem, but yeah, so there's nothing. That's the background. Priority is normal. You know, if I set the site.css to high, it's just going to something else will get evicted. There it is. Priority normal, no expiration. So it just gets kicked out due to capacity. which doesn't seem to be configurable, which seems odd, to say the least. So if you look at this scan, where was it? Do memory pressure collection, expiration scan. When does it know? So then nothing's expired. So it's doing it on pressure. Start scan for expired items. Like, that's fine. I'm going to guess it's the memory pressure thing. It's GC telling it that there's memory pressure. And I'm starting to think that this... I guess I could just turn that option off, couldn't I? That was an option. So if I come back here, and that was the only option there. So I set that to false. Ah, wrong key. Where was I? There it is. Okay. All right, so we're not going to try and compact when there's memory pressure. All right, so now let me make sure I've got all my breakpoints back up so I can see this happen. All right, so in theory, if I just load the app, it'll load. I'll have to add some logging here so I can see what's happening in the console. All right, so that's loaded. And I come over here and I do this. And I do this. Well, nothing's going to be too big. All right. Load the app. View gets compiled. Look at that, it worked. All right, so it seems to be that GC is telling us there's memory pressure, but it seems that that's a little too simplistic. And this does ring a bell. I wonder if that's an issue logged. So it's being evicted because of this flag. So GC notification.register. And if I look that method up, so yeah, register for full GC. Interesting. Garbage collection notifications. Oh, interesting. I wonder if we have an abstraction. Looks like that might be a helper. Yes, look at that. GC, okay, so GC notification.register. Initial collection count, get the collection count of a Gen 2. So it seems to happen whenever a Gen 2 collection happens. Is that what it seems to be? Yeah, each time a Gen 2 garbage collection occurs, presumably due to memory pressure. Interesting. Okay. Well, that thing doesn't really help me. All right, so we're not going to use that. I wonder if there is a bug for this. Or just, I don't know if it's a bug so much as... Yeah. Well, there's definitely something logged. So, I mean, this one is super old. But this one was logged this year. Yeah. So I'll add something here. I think is a downside of the current version, trying to, in that it appears we purge the cache on every Gen 2 collection, which in my case was occurring. Can't spell occurring. That seems wrong. During app start as I was forcibly priming my cache. All right. All right. Anyway, so we figured it out. And we figured out how to work around it just by turning off that flag. So now I am successfully priming the webroot file system cache when the app starts, which is kind of nice. Which is kind of nice. So I can get rid of this to do. Right here, I think. Oh, no, that's the handle file load exceptions. I need to get rid of this one. All right. Let's prime the cache. I don't like this. Prime cache impl is what we usually do. Okay. Right. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. This looks good. This looks good. This looks good. So this, in theory now, I'll put a note in here. Turn off on memory pressure as it results in things being evicted during the priming of the cache on application start. All right. So we add that here. I pull it out here. I prime it here, pass it in here. And it seems to happen pretty quickly, which is nice. Like it loops through everything. So the last thing I'll do is I'll add some logging in here, which I think is always helpful. So logger dot log information. What do I set my logging level to by default in production? Let's have a look. Yeah, good. So I won't be logging any of this stuff in production. Very good. So log information. Okay. Oh, God, I keep hitting page down. Okay. Priming the cache. And then down here for each one, I'll do underscore logger dot log. I think debug is the next one, or trace. I can never remember which one is higher. Priming cache for path, current path. Okay. And then down here, I would want to log here. So probably log debug. Cache entry blah was evicted due to blah. That's probably good to have in any case. So I'll do the same thing here. This is where all the ReSharper people are probably telling me, oh, if you had ReSharper, this shit would just be easy. All right. Oh, come on. Shift. There we go. Turn in that up. What did I do wrong? Oh, went a little bit too far there. Wrong place. This one. All right, let's just copy this. That one. There's my delegate. Oh, man. Jumping all over the place. This is why I don't usually code on a laptop. I really should just bring a keyboard in with me, shouldn't I? No, see, I'm doing all this wrong. I know I'm doing it wrong. What am I doing wrong? Well, that's right. That's right. Okay. That's wrong. And that needs to be there. Okay, there we go. All right. So there, blah, 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 key value reason. Cache key entry, blah, was evicted due to reason, blah, key reason, blah, da, 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 da. Okay. All righty, righty, righty. Okay. And what else do I want to log? So I probably want to log when stuff changes. That would be useful. So we'll come down here. And we will do, I should pass the logger in, shouldn't I? Logger equals logger, control dot your way to glory, pass in the logger. Okay. Very good. Not S. There's the S again. Okay. Logger. Okay. Dot log debug. That's going to be a lot of information. Refreshing contents for, what do I want? Subpath. There we go. Okay. I think I have to do it this way. Otherwise it won't match. Oh, no, they're ordinal, aren't they? They have to line up. Ooh, actually. No, that's right. Okay. They're ordinal, if I recall. Okay. Which is why that was a key reason. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so we do that. And then if it gets a and then if it gets change detected for blah, blah. Okay, refresh and dispose. Good. Yeah, we'll do that later. All right. And then we'll put something in here. Stream for not cached due to file size. It's over the file size. It's over the file size limit. Stream for blah. Stream for blah not cached. Oh, and I said I was going to fix that, didn't I? Maybe later. Okay, I might put a to-do in here just to remind myself that this logic, I'll do it down here. Okay. The length limit check should really be done in the cached, or whatever it's called. Was it? So what did I change its name to? To change the file name in here. In here itself as this implementation. Oh, wow. Implementation can result in the file info metadata being cached while the stream, and thus the file contents itself not being cached. So things like length won't match. All right, so I can fix that later. All right, so we will log stream for blah, not cache it, just over the file size limit of, and I can pass in the file size limit here, which is what? File size limit, file size limit, okay. subpath stream for blah blah blah. Okay. Otherwise, in here, logger.log debug, caching file contents for subpath. Okay, good. Done. All right. Should have a lot more stuff now. All right, so if I run this, let's see what wall of text I get. Oh, look at that. Wonderful. Look at that. Beautiful. All this data. And that's because by default, the templates are set up to show all trace messages from your application of any level. Oh, wow. I just totally stuffed that up, didn't I, by resizing it? There it is. And I've even outrun the buffer. Whoops. Okay, priming cache for blah, refreshing contents for blah, caching file contents for blah. I really should figure out what's higher, cache, debug, or trace, and then maybe I can turn some of these things off. So if I go to, oh man, I go to logger.log, log level. What do we got? Okay, so trace is the lowest. Debug is the next one. Okay, so maybe some of these should be trace. That one should be debug. I think that one should be trace. Okay, because that one gets called on debug. And then that's fine. That should be trace. I don't really want to know normally when they get evicted. Okay, and then these ones, refreshing contents for this path. What do I want to see by default? I probably do want to see that. Change that, loaded it. Change that, loaded it. What I don't want to see is probably this one, because that'll happen every single time, and I don't want to see that one. Or do I? Maybe I do. All right, let's have a look. See what that looks like. So I've got debug only because we turn off trace by default. And it's still doing, what am I doing? Caching file contents, refreshing contents, that's too much. Okay, so I'm still doing caching file contents. Where's that? Oh, that's this one. So if I turn that one off, make that trace only, I should get that one. So that's for every path. So now I should get a single entry for every path when it gets constructed. There we go. That's better. Still overrunning the buffer. That's interesting. Or maybe it's not, actually. This is all low. Oh, no, it's not. This is all happening before the app gets started, which is, okay, that makes sense. All right. So priming the cache from the cache web root file provider. Okay, that's info. And then we go, every file gets listed. That's good. Good. The name's a bit weird. Never mind. Okay, and then when I actually serve it, we get MVC. Good. Sending file. Okay, so what doesn't get traced right now, I think, there's nothing here from live, is there? It's all from micro. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we refresh the contents for the map file. That's interesting. Why did that even get evicted? Why did that need to be refreshed when the request was run? Debug there. Oh, that's fine. That's me. Oh, that's weird. It's like I didn't even do the map file originally. Bootstrap.css.map. I'm not seeing that in the original list. It's not there. Do I even have that file? Is this the file doesn't exist? Yes, that's going to happen on every load. Yes, that's what's going to happen. Okay, interesting. So I'm not caching misses, obviously. So somewhere in here, I mean, the browser's not re-requesting it, obviously, because Chrome's, oh, maybe that's fine then. That makes sense. It's not there. So it got read during the beginning. It scanned the things on disk. Then I get a request for it. Okay, that makes sense. And it is caching it. It's caching it because it's not exist though. So I probably shouldn't be caching things that don't exist, because then file change notifications won't work. So I should probably come back in here. And see, this is another example. This is why I probably really need to ensure that I'm doing this checkup here. That's unfortunate. All right, so I probably need to add it to do here. I'm not going to bore everyone with that, but I'll need to do this change later to make this a little more. Should move the lookup of the file info here such that we can check length against limit and whether file in dot exists is false and not cache in that case. Yeah, okay. So we don't typically cache misses, but this is caching misses right now because the way the API works is that you'll call get file info and then you're supposed to, so here, right? So here it'll pass it in and then it just passes, I call refresh, file info gets loaded. I should be looking at file info.exists. If that's false, I'm caching it. But this will be pointless because it doesn't exist and you won't get a callback for a file that doesn't exist. Yeah, but this object, the cache one, is going to stay in the cache. Obviously, it can't evict itself. It could, in theory, because you could pass in the cache entry, which is here. You could actually pass that in here. So in theory, this could actually evict itself, but that's a design for another day. I'll fiddle around with that some more. For what I have right now is fine for this application, and I've captured the things that I need to do to make it a little more resilient and a little better. So yeah, I think we're in a good place. Let me just add this copyright header while I'm thinking about it, and I will push this to this branch, and then over time I'll figure this out. I'll tighten this up a bit, especially after I talk to some other folks on the team here. But otherwise, this has been really good. We've gotten to a good place here, I think. The end result is that I have what I wanted, which is the access to the dub root is being cached in memory, including the file contents. It gets refreshed if the file changes, which is nice. And so if I deploy this to Azure, I should see the view that shows my slowest requests. So this one over here. I'm hoping that these will no longer become the slowest request. I'm assuming that they would be somewhat fast, or at least, here's the actual homepage. Average server response time for the homepage as measured by App Insights is 2 milliseconds. And I'd rather, not see these things in here at all, but, we'll see. I mean, ultimately, if the file is somewhat large, then it takes time to serve, right? The homepage is only 1.26 kilobytes. Mind you, these other files aren't very big. So we'll see. We'll see what this does. We'll see if this makes any difference. I'm not really sure if it will or not. But it was a good exercise, if nothing else. So thanks again, everyone, for listening to me ramble on while I fumble my way through some code. This will end up on my feed if you want to watch it afterwards. And I'm going to try and do this a little more often. Anytime I think of doing something on the website, any coding, I will... I'll try to go ahead and share it. So I'll see you again after the holidays.